Welcome viewers to the Personal Injury Law Show. My name's Tony Carbone, personal injury lawyer with 25 years experience. Next to me I've got John Karantzis, an accredited law specialist.
Good evening,
John.
Good evening, Tony. Good
What's
evening.
an accredited law specialist, John?
Tony, I'm a specialist accredited in personal injury law by the Law Institute of Victoria.
Also next to me and the guest tonight is Greg Barnes, National President of the Australian Lawyers Alliance, also barrister at law, former host of Conflict of Interest, and a host of other things. Good evening, Greg.
A host of other things, I like that.
A lot of other things.
Yeah, exactly.
Good evening, Greg.
How are you, mate?
Good, thanks. Yourself?
Good, thank you.
Tonight, Greg, we're talking about immigration detention and Commonwealth liability. Now, just before we get to that, I just want to raise a couple of articles in the paper, Greg. You're familiar with these articles about the people coming over in boats and planes, and I just want to say a couple of words about Tony Abbott. Tony Abbott said that the only coalition could be trusted to stop the boats. A pretty desperate Prime Minister has lost control of our borders, lost control of our detention centres, and now is in danger of losing control of Parliament. What's your take on all of this, Greg?
Well, I want to know who writes those lines because they're so appalling.
Yeah.
Look, the issue of boat people is the most overrated and overwrought issue in Australian politics at the moment. One of the difficulties is that you are getting a movement of people around the world, and Australia is getting some of that global movement of people.
But Greg, it's very topical.
Well, look, it is topical, but it's topical because of a lack of leadership by politicians. Instead, what we've had by both sides of politics is a race to the bottom on this issue. And you would think, for example, that this country was subjected to millions of people crossing its borders, as, for example, happens in Europe. We're talking about, 6,000 or 7,000 people at most in any one particular year.
Is
Greg,
that all?
you say it's scaremongering here. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I am saying it's scaremongering because the numbers don't stack up. This is an irrational debate. And the problem is that we are pandering to the worst elements of human nature.
I thought we're talking 20, 30, 40,000 people invading Australia's shores, Greg.
Well, if you listen to Mr Abbott and if you listen to Chris Bowen, the Immigration Minister, you might think that, but the numbers are extremely small. They will remain small because let's remember where we are in the world. We are in a part of the world where we're on an island. It's extremely difficult to get to this country.
That everyone wants to come to.
Well, John, Greg, let me
everybody
just
wants
say
to
this,
come to
your numbers are both wrong. Last 12 months, we've had 9,000 people come into the country.
And a lot of them,
Yep.
yeah, but we're talking about boats, a lot of them have been coming on planes.
Yeah. Well, look, let's keep the topic going. Look, there's two main issues here. We're talking about the non-delegable duty of care of the government towards these asylum seekers, and also we're talking about circumstances such that a person's detention in an immigration detention centre is found to be unlawful. Could that person ground a claim against the Commonwealth Government in the tort of false imprisonment? Now, the law that governs migration here, Greg, is the Migration Act 1958, and in particular, John, what can you tell us about Section 189 of the Migration Act? What's it say?
Section 189, Tony, allows the Department of Immigration and its officers to arrest anyone in Australia that's unlawful, as in, Tony, they're not an Australian citizen.
Or unlawful or suspect to be unlawful.
Suspected, yes.
Yeah. Greg, the Pacific solution and the boundaries of lawful detention, what can you tell us about the Pacific solution?
Well, the Pacific solution was a political fix dreamed up by the Howard government to win the 2001 election, and effectively what it did was to excise from the Australian mainland some islands to which people were coming and seeking to be processed as asylum seekers or as making claims as refugees. The Howard government decided that these people were going to be shunted off to Manus Island, which is off the coast of Papua New Guinea, and secondly Nauru, to which we paid buckets of money, some would call bribes, in order to process people over a period of time. Now, what happened, of course, was that the Howard government... Mandatory detention has been in Australia for asylum seekers since 1992. It was introduced by the Keating government, but it really took off in terms of its nastiness and in terms of putting the screws on people under the Howard government, because effectively you had people in jail-like facilities for long periods of time, including children. And I think one of the remarkable things I said at the time was that we would not allow in this country a 7 or 8-year-old child to be placed in detention in any shape or form, and if it happened, it'd be on the front page of every newspaper in the country. And yet we had thousands of children traumatised by mandatory detention.
We'll go on to this subject in greater detail, but can I ask you this? there's a lot of detention centres, and there's one being built in Tasmania. Are you aware of that, John? They spent $15 million to build it, and where's it located? Because I don't know.
At Pontville, which is just out of Hobart, in an old army camp.
Okay. Now,
Well, that sounds nice and
cold.
cold
It's
and
freezing cold. It's set on a plain. It's one of the bleakest parts of an otherwise very pretty island.
Well, can I say this? Look, there's two sides of a story here. One, we're talking about a number of, say, about 9,000 people coming every year, give or take, that are seeking asylum and probably can be assimilated into society to do some general labouring work and other things that our people in this country won't do. And on the other hand, there's the scaremongering where people are saying, why should we allow these people to come into the country, get a free kick? Yep. There's a fear that a lot of these people go into benefits, Greg.
Well, they don't. In fact, the profile of the average asylum seeker is of a person of some enterprise because in order to get from Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, whatever country that people are coming from, requires some effort in terms of logistically getting to Australia. You generally find also asylum seekers are people who are well qualified in their own country. I've had, and we've probably all had, got into cabs over the past few years and spoken to people who've come to Australia and sought asylum who are highly qualified engineers, doctors, etc. One of the tragedies is in Australia that we're not recognising that talent pool that we've got in this country. The other point that I'd make is that the crime rates amongst asylum seekers are, in fact, extremely low.
Well, just on that issue there, John, is there a perception out there that most of these people coming in are not clean and...
The perception, Tony, is that they will not assimilate with the Australian culture.
And is there also a perception that most of them are crooked?
Well, crooked or, firstly, that they're queue jumpers, or secondly, that, wait a minute, you've got these people travelling from, places like Afghanistan, Africa, all the... We're talking thousands of miles. How can they afford it, Tony?
Well,
if they can afford to
just shows
pay,
you how desperate they are, John. I mean, to get out of their country,
wait a
I'd
minute.
imagine.
We're talking like could be $20,000, $30,000 Australian to get here. Wait a minute, $20,000 or $30,000 Australian in those countries can buy you a mini city.
Look, we've got a shortage, I think, of people that can do industrial type work these days and other things like that.
Well, look, I recently visited the Darwin Detention Centre, which is effectively a jail. In fact, it is a jail. And there are less things to do there than there are in a jail. But I visited some young men, able-bodied, smart young men from the Middle East. And I'm thinking, why aren't we these people working in our community? Why are we wasting talent?
Greg, we're going to have to go to a sponsors break. Viewers, please stay tuned. We've got to go to a sponsors break. We'll be back very, very shortly. Thank you.